bullet wound. There was no trauma observed at all.
Has this guy had a heart attack? Did he drink too much?
But as investigators scratch the surface, a more nefarious scenario emerges.
I have to tell you something.
Even though he's 65 years of age, he's quite the ladies' man.
This adds a whole new wrinkle into this case.
To crack this mystery, Kenda and his team must nail down a crucial detail.
We had no idea what occurred during that hour and a half.
It could have been a very volatile situation.
He's gonna snap one of these days.
But it's our mission to find out. First reports are never to be believed. Don't put something in my head. Just tell me where. I will go there and I will determine what we've got.
Girl, I can't believe you gave him your number.
It may be late, but Carol McClendon and Rhonda Simmons are still riding high after a night on the town.
Girl, he was cute.
Carol's gonna drop Rhonda off at her townhouse.
Wait, what's going on at your mom's house?
Carol points out to Rhonda, but there's an ambulance parked there.
Can you imagine what they'd be thinking? Is my family in danger? Are they hurt? They have no idea what's going on, but they know that it's something very serious.
Oh my God.
I'm often up several times during the night, and sometimes I cannot go back to sleep. That particular morning, I was standing in front of the window looking at the city lights, wondering what everyone was up to at that moment. And the phone rang, and I knew that somebody was up to something.
It's Kenda. Okay, I'll be right there.
Careful, Joe.
I will.
20 minutes later, Kenda pulls up to a suburban home awash in police lights. Detective Perry Freeman is already on the scene.
Hey, Lieutenant. Sorry to drag you out at this hour. And anything else going on?
In '94, I was one of 6 homicide detectives that worked under Joe Kenda. And when I arrived, there were a number of uniforms already there.
So what do we got? Victim's name is Willie Jackson, age 65.
He spent 20 years in the Air Force. Now this guy, he looks like he's 45. He's in great shape for a 65-year-old man.
You know, he's somebody who really takes care of himself. He works at the fitness center at Fort Carson.
His wife's a lot younger, maybe mid-40s. He lived here with her and her teenage son.
So who made the call?
Wife did.
Said she found her husband on the bedroom floor unresponsive, no pulse.
Thinks it might have been alcohol poisoning.
Alcohol poisoning. What do you think?
I only did a walkthrough, but she could be right.
The Major Crimes Unit responds to any suspicious death. And in a case like this, I don't think anybody knew if we had alcohol poisoning or if it could be something else.
Now let's go take a closer look while we wait for the coroner to arrive.
Normally, when I walk into a crime scene, nobody's in there. And when I walked into this crime scene,
So what's with the full house?
there was a mob in there.
They were here when I got here.
There are 3 women and a young male standing around in this kitchen.
So who are all these people? These 2 are the wife's daughter and a friend.
He said they saw the EMTs and they stopped on their way home. So they weren't here when this event occurred.
How about the other 2?
Well, one is his wife, Tony, and the kid is named Malik. He is the wife's son by another marriage.
So they live here. They were here when the ambulance got on scene. We can't have them all standing around together, though. Yes, sir.
It's important to have witnesses, but it's not important to have them in the crime scene. So my next direction was move these people out of this building.
I want you to take the 2 witnesses and put them in separate patrol cars. Yes, sir.
If you allow these people to be together, you could wind up with a similar story that they have rehearsed. Further, we don't want them to overhear or oversee what we're doing.
Let's take a look around.
The first thing you do is make an assessment of what kind of place is this. Are things broken and out of place and turned over?
Someone runs a tight ship here.
Yeah, it sure looks that way.
I found the house to be fairly tidy, well kept. Things were in their normal places.
The one thing detectives find to be out of place is the victim himself.
When we first observed Willie's body, he was on the floor of a bedroom.
It's a strange place to lay down. I guess if he was drunk.
You could smell the alcohol. So the assumption was that he had just been drinking recently.
Paramedics said they found him in that position.
In Colorado, a body is never disturbed until a coroner is present. We observe what we can see without moving the body.
On initial observation, there was no ligature marks, there was no bullet wound, there was no trauma observed at all.
Well, he could have had a heart attack. Maybe hit the bottle too hard.
Yep. There's more empties in the kitchen. Wife might have been right about the alcohol poisoning.
So alcohol is kind of an interesting drug because at really low dosage, it acts kind of like a stimulant. It gets people excited. It makes you, more comfortable at parties. It makes you outgoing. But at high doses, it has the opposite effect. It's a very powerful depressant.
A person can actually drink himself to death by consuming way too much alcohol. The body functions slow down, and pretty soon you can just stop breathing.
Hey, Joe. Heard you might have a body for me.
Yeah, he's all yours. Let's talk to witnesses.
We leave the coroner to do his work, and it's time to do our work. Let's talk to the other humans that aren't dead and see what they know about how Willie came to be the way he is.
Well, come Lieutenant Kenda, it's Detective Friedman.
So the first person I speak to is the son, Malik. He is Tony's son. He is not Willie's son.
All right, do you mind if we ask you a few questions?
He exhibits the behavior of a normal 17-year-old, sullen and quiet and distrustful of adults.
First off, I'm sorry about your stepfather.
We weren't that type.
Did you get along?
No, not really.
I don't think there was a very good relationship between Malik and Willie Jackson. Maybe some jealousy, I'm not sure. But we certainly wanted to take note of what his attitude was like. He was somewhat cooperative, but we were also somewhat suspicious of him.
He's not quite as upset as you would think somebody in his position should be. Does that raise suspicion? Sure it does. But it also could be just, he's a 17-year-old kid, didn't get along well with his stepfather, and just doesn't really care.
Where's your natural father?
He's up in Washington. Haven't talked to him in a while, though.
Why don't you tell us what happened tonight?
Malik says, I was out with friends. I didn't come home till about 11:30.
And my mom was upset. Told me to go to my room. Willie was in the mood.
Malik says that in a mood to him means that Willie's drunk. Willie's always drunk, and therefore he's always in a mood.
Malik had indicated that Willie Jackson was basically an alcoholic and pretty much drank every day.
With alcoholism, they have to maintain a certain level of alcohol in their system, and so they might keep a bottle in their drawer or have some in their car or kind of stash it around because they know that their body will crave it throughout the day.
He always wants to come home and fight, and he doesn't stop until he passes out.
So what else did your mom say?
She told me to stay out of his way. Stay in my room.
Who the hell you think you are? Talking to me like that?
Mama, you drunk ass fool.
Malik advised that he could hear his mother and Willie upstairs arguing.
So he turned up his television so he didn't have to hear the disturbance.
According to Malik, he was up for the next few hours, and eventually hunger struck.
He said, my mother called to me from the master bedroom.
Yeah.
Malik! Malik!
What?
Get in here!
So Malik walked into the bedroom and saw his mother kneeling on the floor next to Willie.
She was checking for a pulse, but there was nothing. She called 911, but it was too late. He was already dead.
Excuse me, Lieutenant. Sorry to interrupt. They need you inside.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. So what do you got so far?
I'll show you. So it's totally possible that he died of natural causes or alcohol poisoning. But take a look at this.
So he rolls the victim over onto his stomach. Now we have a mystery on our hands. We are summoned to this home because Mr. Willie Jackson is dead on the second floor. When the wife called 911, she said alcohol poisoning. Our coroner reports he has a puncture wound that we cannot explain.
It's small, but it could go pretty deep. It's in a really bad spot.
There are important vessels that run through the thigh, one of which is the femoral artery, the main artery that supplies blood to the lower extremity.
If it was deep enough, could have hit an artery. He could have bled to death. It's too soon to say. Have to wait on the autopsy.
Right? Well, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Kind of a strange place for a stabbing.
Yeah, just one wound.
Someone with a knife. It's a very personal way to kill somebody. When that occurs and rage is a factor, there are multiple wounds. Willie has no other wounds. None. That's very, very odd.
The wound did not look like it was like a really bad stab wound. You know, you generally think of somebody getting stabbed in the chest or slitting the throat or stomach or something like that. You know, you don't think of somebody who wants to kill somebody stabbing them or slicing them in the back of the thigh. So that also is really unusual because it's like that would make it seem like more of an accident than an intentional stabbing.
We're all thinking that's a very unusual place to be stabbed. And we thought possibly he had cut himself on something outside, or maybe he had been injured before he even came home from work. He could have fallen on something.
It's odd. Even if the wound didn't hit the artery, it seems like it still would have bled plenty.
So if we're concerned about blood loss being the significant factor here, where is it?
There's no blood on the bed or the walls.
Well, this place is clean.
And he pulls the sheets back. Ooh, now that's significant.
We found that there was a large soaking of blood into the mattress of the bed next to the body.
That's a lot of blood.
The bloodstain has been concealed by clean sheets. Why would somebody do that?
Hey, Lieutenant, can I talk to you?
Of course.
I don't know if it was connected or not, but I've answered 2 calls here today. The last one was about several hours ago.
He said somebody called 911 and we responded here on a welfare check.
Well, I think if police are called to the same location for domestic violence several times over a course of time, that, you know, they might be concerned that something's going on that they really don't know. But there hadn't been, this wasn't the situation where Tony and Willie had been involved in police, you know, coming to check on them often. So police really didn't have any background information that there was trouble here. They were just doing what someone had asked them to do. So a welfare check is generally somebody else who sees or hears something going on somewhere and is concerned and calls police and says, hey, you know, this might be happening, or I hear this going on. Can you please check the welfare of these people?
Miss Jackson answered the door, said nothing going on, and she didn't need the police. So we left.
And then a couple hours later, she calls back, and now we're here.
Who made the first 911 call?
I don't know. I'll have to call dispatch to find out.
So where's the wife now?
She's over here.
I'm gonna talk to her. Thanks.
Up to this point in the investigation, Tony hasn't been talked to yet. Now it's time to find out what was going on in this household tonight.
Who concealed blood in my crime scene?
Tony, I'm Lieutenant Kenda. Very sorry about your husband. You mind if I ask you a few questions?
No, that's fine.
When I meet Tony, she's upset, somewhat soft-spoken.
How long have you known Willie?
We've been married for about 2 years now.
She said, I met him at the Garcia Gym on Fort Carson, where he's employed as a trainer.
Hey, can you spot me?
Absolutely.
Think I need a little help on my phone.
I think so. Go ahead, show it to me again. What do you like to do for fun?
Why are you asking me out?
Maybe.
I'm Tony.
Willie.
She said, we fell in love very quickly.
He was actually married at the time, but wasn't happy, so he left her for me.
And it's your belief he died of alcohol poisoning?
When I met him, I knew he liked to drink, but I never realized it was this bad.
She said, I noticed in the last few months that the drinking became a problem and we began to argue a lot.
Can you walk me through what happened?
Willie came home late. He usually gets off at 9, but didn't get here until 10:30. I was on the phone with my ex-husband at the time, discussing some issues about our son, Malik.
Cornelius, he needs his father. You should come out and see him.
Tony! Where
She said he was so drunk he could barely stand up.
Can't you see I'm on the phone? Oh my God, is that blood? What the hell did you do now?
None of your damn business. Who the hell are you talking to?
Will you lower your voice? It's just Malik's dad.
Oh, give me that.
Right! He gets so jealous over the smallest things. I was so mad. I yelled at him to go to bed and sleep it off. And finally, he slunk off.
Tony believes her ex-husband, Cornelius, must have been worried when the line went dead. Apparently, he called 911 to have police check on her.
But she sent the officers away because at the time they arrived, there was no problem, she said.
What happened next?
Well, Malik had come home, and I sent him to his room in case Willie woke up. I didn't want any more tension between those two. And I guess the whole time, Willie kept going on his whiskey. So I went in to check on him. Oh my God, Willie, are you okay? So much blood. Did you drink all this?
She said he mumbled something. She couldn't understand what it was.
Okay. Just lift your head up.
But she put a pillow under his head and decided that she needed to clean these sheets before any stains set in.
So I got that going and something just didn't feel right. I had this sick feeling. So I went back to check on him again. Oh my God, Willie! Malik!
Why?
Malik, get in here!
She called Malik, her son, to come up, and at that point they realized it was probably time to call 911.
Here's the bed sheets and rags that I used to clean the carpet in the bedroom.
Okay, now this is important. Did you clean up blood anywhere else in the house besides the bedroom?
No, why?
So, well, he's got a puncture wound in his leg. And if it hit a major vein or an artery, that's possible he could have bled to death.
Seriously?
We're also considering the possibility that he was stabbed this evening.
You mean someone could have killed him?
She appeared to be very shocked.
Can you think of anyone that might want to harm your husband?
No.
You mentioned he left work at 9 and didn't get home until 10:30. Any idea where he stopped on the way?
He didn't say.
Here's my card. If you think of anything else, give me a call. I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
We're gonna find out who did this. I promise.
So we know Willie is alive at or about 9 p.m., and he's alive at 10:30 p.m. when he comes home.
What if Willie Jackson encountered someone on his way home from work?
We need to know where Willie Jackson was for the 90 minutes that he's unaccounted for in his timeline.
Hoping to find out, Kenda sends a detective to Willie's place of employment.
The Garcia gym on Fort Carson opens at 5 o'clock in the morning because GIs have to get their exercise in before they go to work.
Excuse me, can I speak to the manager?
Yeah, sure. I'm Jose Peralta. How can I help you?
I hate to tell you this, but one of your employees, Willie Jackson, was found dead last night.
That detective speaks to Willie's boss at the gymnasium, tells him that Willie's dead, which the guy cannot believe that he is.
What kind of employee was he?
Well, he was great, actually.
Jose told Detective Freeman that Willie was a very good worker, always on time, never any problems with him.
The people he worked with really loved him. He was a model employee. He was on time. He did his job. And even though his boss may have suspected that he maybe drank a little bit during the day, because he was basically well-liked in his professional situation, nobody really ever raised the issue with him.
He never complained once if I needed something.
Do you know what time he left work last night?
He refereed a volleyball game, so 9, give or take. I can ask some of the other guys that worked that game and get back to you with the exact time if you'd like. I want to help.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Listen, you know if Willie had a problem with alcohol?
And Jose indicated that, well, you know, I could smell alcohol on him, but he was such a good worker that never interfered with his work, so I didn't go there.
We're still trying to figure out what our storyline is here between all these different players. And then...
Come in.
Lieutenant, there's Miss Jackson here to see you. Says she has something important to tell you.
Okay, send her in.
Let's swim in.
I have to tell you something.
All right, have a seat.
I was thinking, and there's something you should know.
Oh? And what do you need to tell me?
Willie was cheating on me.
Why didn't you tell us this earlier?
I'm sorry, my mind's all over the place.
Even though Willie Jackson is 65 years of age, he's quite the ladies' man. What if he stops by his girlfriend's place on his way home and she stabs him? It's happened before.
What makes you think he has a girlfriend?
Well, about a week ago, I was looking in his truck and I found some condoms. The hell?
The wife, Tony, tells me they don't use condoms when they have sex. Obviously, he uses condoms with this other woman.
Now I'm wondering if he was with her last night before he came home. I found this note.
So now we've introduced yet another person. Who is Jenny, and is Jenny married?
It's entirely possible Willie stopped by Jenny's house after work.
Jenny, you home?
That's Robert.
And her husband came home unexpectedly.
Back door. Go.
Obviously, we want to talk to Jenny. So we track her down at her residence.
Lieutenant Kenda, this is Detective Freeman from CSPD. We're looking for Jenny Harris.
That's me.
Much like his current wife, Tony, she is young and she is very attractive.
What's this all about?
We're investigating the death of Willie Jackson.
She admits that, yeah, I know Willie. He's in a large circle of friends that I have.
None of us can believe what happened. It's really horrible.
We'd like to ask you a few questions.
Okay, it'll have to be quick. My husband's coming home soon.
It shouldn't take long.
Come on in.
We say we're there because we have information that leads us to believe that she had a relationship with Willie Jackson.
Relationship? No. I told you we were just friends.
We were told that you were having an affair. Is that true?
I'd really rather not discuss that right now.
Jenny, you can be straight with us. Your husband doesn't need to know.
We want her to understand clearly that we're not going to reveal her involvement, or sexual or otherwise, with this individual to anyone she may be associated with.
We just need to make sure that you and your husband weren't involved in his death.
What? Fine. Willie and I were seeing each other. It was nothing serious, just casual.
She finally admits to being involved with him.
You know, he's a handsome guy. Wasn't really love between us. But I haven't even seen him since last week.
Is your husband aware of the relationship?
No.
Are you sure?
Believe me, if he knew, I would know about it.
Although Jenny seems truthful, detectives can't just take her word for it.
Fortunate for us, we're dealing with a very confined time frame. To commit a murder, you must at a minimum have the opportunity to do so.
Can you tell us where your husband was last night between 9 and 10:30 p.m.?
Yes, he was with me. We were at my sister's house playing cards until midnight. I can give you her information.
I'm checking it.
Yeah.
We called Jenny's sister to verify that they had no opportunity to be involved in the death of Willie Jackson on the prior evening.
Checks out.
All right, well, thank you for your time.
Wait, you're not going to talk to my husband about this, are you?
We're not concerned about that. We'll let ourselves out.
I know more secrets and have forgotten more secrets than most people will ever know. My only concern is who caused Willie Jackson to be no longer alive.
With their lead up in smoke, Kenda and Freeman are back to the most basic of questions. Was Willie Jackson even murdered?
Hey, Doc.
Hey, Lieutenant.
You finished with the Willie Jackson autopsy yet?
As a matter of fact, I just got the toxicology report back.
The coroner said he did have a very high blood alcohol content, but that's meaningless and very common in an alcoholic.
The leg wound is the culprit. And it's not an accidental injury where he ran into something sharp. It was made by a steak knife. And it's in the damnedest spot, too, the Hunter's Canal.
This area of the thigh has some veins and arteries that come from the heart, and so a fairly minor wound could cause extensive bleeding.
When we talk about blood loss, the important factor is how much blood have we lost. There's a certain point at which no matter who you are, that's enough blood loss to kill you. In this case, we got a guy who, he's a little bit older, but he's very healthy, he works out. He's the kind of guy that could withstand a significant amount of blood loss before it's really gonna affect him.
It severed a vein, and there is some damage to the femoral artery. So the method of death is exsanguination, and I'm ruling it a homicide.
Exsanguination is essentially a very fancy term for bleeding to death.
Here we are. This is a scientifically established murder.
Given that Willie Jackson died a slow death, it's unclear what time he was stabbed. It's even less clear who stabbed him.
Absent any other suspects, one person who's obviously a person of interest is the wife of Willie Jackson, one Toni Jackson. At this point, we want to find out as much as possible about the relationship between Toni and Willie Jackson. So we decide we want to talk to Willie's ex-wife, Cynthia. We want to ask her two things. We want to ask her about Toni. We want to ask her about Willie.
Yeah, I heard he's dead. It's so hard to believe.
Can you tell us a little bit about him?
She responds about Willie that he is a good man and he does drink, but he's always been a good provider. She always speaks well of him until he meets this evil woman.
But that Toni, now she's a piece of work. Now she's the kind of crazy who would kill her husband.
Why is that?
She tried to kill me.
What?
Oh my. Well, that's interesting. We're investigating the stabbing death of Willie Jackson, and we believe his wife Toni is involved in his death, but we don't have enough evidence to prove it. And now, Willie's ex-wife is telling us that Toni tried to kill her as well.
Can you tell us what happened?
She tried to convince Willie to leave me and marry her, and I was not gonna have that. So I thought it was a phase. I thought it was something he'd get over, but that witch came after me.
The ex-wife says that she was driving down the street one day,
and another car was driving the opposite direction. The car looked like Toni's.
Did you get a good look at the person driving?
No, but I knew it was her.
And at that point, she told Willie, I'm giving you a divorce. Toni is crazy. I don't want anything to do with her.
Did you report the incident?
What proof did I have?
So she told police that it's not out of the realm of possibility that maybe Toni went a little crazy and went after Willie.
Now she has nothing good to say about Toni. Toni is somewhere of a mix between Attila the Hun and the Antichrist, which is what you would expect the wife of 41 years to say about the new bride.
And that's why you think that she might have killed Willie?
Yeah. She's crazy.
All right, well, thank you for your time. I'm sorry about your ex-husband.
So you have to kind of disregard what she says about Toni, because she absolutely despises Toni. She broke up her marriage. But if Toni really did throw that rock, who knows what else she could be capable of?
Toni certainly fits the bill. I mean, if he's a womanizing drunk who picks fights with her kids, that's a motive to kill somebody.
True, but that wouldn't hold up in court without evidence. Plus, we're unaware of Willie's whereabouts for 90 minutes.
We know that Willie Jackson was stabbed after 9 o'clock, after he left work. He wasn't hurt at work.
There's a lot of possibilities of what might have happened. Between when he got off work and when he arrived home, he could have had an altercation with someone.
Or he could have gotten stabbed after he arrived home, and that also works.
Take this. Hello?
As this investigation is progressing, Detective Freeman got a phone call.
Hey, this is Jose Peralta from Garcia Fitness Center. We met the morning after Willie died.
Yes, of course.
The boss informs us that he spoke to a co-worker of Willie's who was working the night of Willie's death.
Remember how I told you Willie refereed a volleyball game that night? Well, I thought it was over around 9, but turns out it was a close game. It went really long.
Yeah?
My guy said Willie didn't leave the gym until 10:05.
Really? Okay, hey, thanks very much. So? So it turns out Willie left work at 10. which means he went straight home.
So there is no other Mr. X or Miss X involved that's in the house. And who's in that house? Well, Tony and Malik certainly are.
But was it Willie's wife or stepson who had it out for him? For insight, Kenda and Freeman turned to a family friend.
Willie has a friend that he spent a lot of time with, is in the service with.
Thanks for coming in on such short notice. I'm just really shook up about Willie.
He tells us that Willie has his issues. He likes to drink. He likes the ladies.
He certainly wasn't the greatest husband in the world, but he was a really good friend to me.
Did you know about the new marriage?
Oh yeah, me and my wife spent New Year's Eve with him and Tony last year. Despite the age difference, they really did seem like a good couple. Has Willie mentioned to you about any issues at home? He came to me seeking advice about his stepson.
Raising a teenage boy at age 17 is not a simple process when you're not his father. And so Willie asked his friend for advice.
Kid is out of control. He doesn't want to go to work. He doesn't want to go to school. He brings his friends over all the hours of the day and night. And anytime we ask him to do anything, he just won't listen.
I think it's just a phase.
At that age, teenagers are going through all kinds of hormonal issues. He was probably just coming into manhood, just trying to find himself.
His friend explained to Willie that that's normal for a teenage boy that's been uprooted from his father, so he's going to be an angry young man.
When I say angry, I'm not exaggerating. I can see it in his eyes. He's gonna snap one of these days.
You really mean that?
Dead serious. He's got it in for me.
I think Willie was afraid of him.
Afraid that Malik might turn violent?
Definitely.
Well, no. Is he capable of murder? Of course he is. He's a human.
You're thinking, when you first interviewed Malik at the scene that night, he didn't appear to be very upset.
Malik is an angry young man. He is physically superior in every way to his stepfather. And his stepfather had told his friend 3 days earlier he was afraid Malik was going to become violent.
Kenda wonders, did a fight between Willie and his stepson turn deadly? And did Tony help cover for her son?
We want to talk to Cornelius, his natural father, to find out about Malik as a person. Is he capable of violent behavior?
Hi, this is Lieutenant Kenda with the Colorado Springs Police Department. I'd like to ask you a few questions regarding the death of Willie Jackson. Is now a good time?
Sure, what can I do for you?
I said, so why is it that Malik is living with his mother and the late Willie Jackson and not with you?
Well, I recently retired from the Army and was looking for a job up here in Washington. Now, Malik was living with me then, but he was having problems in school.
What type of problems?
Kids picking on him, starting fights. He started cutting classes and his grades dropped. Thought the change of pace might do him some good, give him a fresh start.
He said so. I discussed it with my ex-wife, and she agreed she and her new husband, Willie, would deal with Malik.
And when did he move here to the Springs?
About 3 months ago, but things haven't gotten any better. The night Willie died, Tony actually called me, asking me what she should do about Malik.
Cornelius indicated that at that time, while he was on the phone with Tony, he heard Willie come home.
He was screaming at her. I heard her yell in the background for me to call 911.
And then the line went dead, and we called to have the police check on what's going on in that house. So we now know that Cornelius, in fact, was the person who made that first phone call.
I was really worried about Tony and my son. I mean, they had me freaking out.
Let me ask you this. Which do you think is more likely? That your ex-wife would be violent toward Willie, or that your son would be violent protecting his mother?
I don't know. I don't want to think any of those things happen.
All right, well, I appreciate the help. Thank you.
With Tony and Malik equally good suspects, Kenda hatches a plan to tip the scales.
When we start to focus on one or two people, we'll again review the physical evidence, seeing if it gives us a better insight into what happened.
What's this all about?
Mrs. Jackson, we have a warrant to search the premises for further evidence.
What? What more could you possibly need?
Please step aside.
Well, right away, Tony's very defensive, like, we already told you everything that happened.
Luckily for Kenda, his crime scene technicians have something that can bring the truth to light.
Luminol is a chemical agent that crime scene investigators can spray at crime scenes. Essentially, it's a way to detect hidden blood or blood that's been cleaned up at a scene.
So we searched this entire house, They spray the suspected areas where blood might be. It will cause the blood stain to fluoresce in the dark. It turns a weird blue-green color.
Is everybody ready?
Sure. Wow.
And we find blood all over this house. When humans die from bleeding to death, their blood can tell you the story of the death. All of it speaks to, look at this. This is why Willie Jackson is dead. When we began this investigation, we had a crime scene with very little blood. But after spraying luminol, there is blood all over this house. Without a doubt, this is where Willie Jackson was dead.
There's blood stains on the walls. There's blood stains on the doorknobs. There's blood stains on the floor. A lot more than the human eye would ever have seen.
And it's very obvious that this is a much bigger deal than we thought initially.
Looks like he was stabbed in the kitchen, near the phone.
Yeah, they made a huge effort to cover up the evidence. Must have taken them hours.
Investigators begin removing carpet and tiles to place into evidence.
You guys are wrecking my house.
Well, that's not our intention. We're just doing our jobs.
So she is coming unstuck. Now she's very, very worried and has a very, very guilty appearance.
What, you think me and my son did this?
I find it awfully strange that you said the only place you cleaned up blood was in this bedroom. And now we're finding it all over the house.
But my son had nothing to do with this.
Then who did?
I don't know.
Tony's very upset. You know, what are you looking for? Are you insinuating that I had something to do with this, that Malik maybe had something to do with this? And then she tells police he had nothing to do with it. Well, you might start thinking, okay, well, are you just trying to tell us something? Is this the truth coming out now?
We're looking at her, and she's unable to maintain eye contact. Her body language is a flight body language. She's a nervous wreck.
You sure you don't want to change your statement? Anything you want to add?
I already told you the truth.
I mean, it's pretty obvious to me, based on my own experience, that Tony's up to her neck in the death of her husband.
But Kenda still needs Tony to admit that. And he knows just how to coerce her into doing so.
Okay. Are you willing to take a polygraph to prove it?
Yeah, I guess so.
Fine. Come on down.
Okay. Just have a seat for me right here.
She comes to the station, you know, all dressed and ready to go and seems very confident.
Have you ever done one of these before?
No.
It's okay. It's real simple.
But her personality starts to change. She starts getting a little bit fidgety.
To me, a polygraph in and by itself is not a scientific instrument. It's why they're not admissible in court. What is useful is if the person believes that that machine is going to say whether they're telling the truth or not and cause them to make a statement, then that is what is useful. That's why I always would offer polygraphs to people, not because I believed in what the machine said. I want to know what you say. I want to know if you think this machine is going to tell us what we already believe, and you're going to tell me I'm right.
Is that too tight?
You know, when you sit down in that chair and the polygraph test is about to start, that's when you maybe realize, wait a minute, maybe I'm not able to kind of lie my way through this.
Miss Jackson, are you okay?
Stop. I'm not gonna do this.
Just sit tight.
So the polygraphist went out and told Kenda, hey, she's not taking the test.
I stabbed him. I stabbed Willie. I was trying to defend myself.
It's okay. Just tell us what happened.
He came home from work that night already drunk. So drunk. I think he always has a few on his way home. All right, you should come see him.
Who you on the phone with?
Hold on. Willie, lower your voice. It's just Malik's dad.
Who the hell you think you are? Talking to me like that.
Willie, you drunk-ass fool. Can't you see him on the phone?
They get into a pretty good argument. They're in a shoving match now.
Hello? Man, come get your wife and kids. I don't want them here no more.
I'm gonna call the cops if you don't stop. Cornelius, call the cops!
And he then rips the phone out of the wall, and he's pretty upset.
What the hell is wrong with you? He took off after that. I think he was scared that the police might actually show up, and of course they did. But by then, things had settled down, and Malik was still downstairs, so I thought things were okay.
Do you know where Willie went during that time period?
I have no idea.
Tony explains that after the police left, Willie eventually came out of hiding.
What? Are you trying to get me arrested?
Willie, I'm sick of this. It's the same thing every night.
Why don't you just leave then?
Yeah, okay, maybe I will.
Standing over her, he is choking her.
And she grabbed a steak knife.
He lets go of her, and as he walks away, she just poked him in the back of the leg.
That blade finds the only place in his back of his left thigh that would kill him. It is magic. Or in the case of Willie Jackson, the worst possible luck.
He went to bed. I thought he'd sleep off the booze, so I started cleaning up before Malik came upstairs. I was so upset I didn't even know he was dying.
She never thought in her wildest dreams that, stabbing someone in the leg like that could cause their death.
In my opinion, I do not believe Tony had any intent to kill him. She wanted to hurt him, and that's not the same thing.
After reviewing the case, the DA concludes that Tony Jackson was acting in self-defense and declines to press murder charges.
She legitimately seemed to be telling the truth about being fearful for her life. He's choking her. He's highly intoxicated. Grabbing the knife was just kind of an instinctive thing. But I think she actually thought things could escalate to the point that she could possibly die that evening.
In my view, her crime was cleaning up blood, as she was ultimately charged with.
As a result of that, she was sentenced to 3 years of supervised probation.
What's sad about this is that Willie, had he not been so drunk and passed out, he maybe could have saved himself. If he realized, I'm bleeding really badly, maybe I can call for help myself.
In married couples, the possibility of tragedy coming from constant argument is immense. Your behavior drives your life, and your behavior can also end it very suddenly.
It begins with a sound no one remembers clearly. A metallic echo in a narrow Tokyo alley, swallowed by rain and neon light. Some say it was a door slamming. Others insist it was a scream, short, cut off, unfinished. At 11:47 p.m. on a humid night in June 2003, someone vanished, and the city kept moving as if nothing had happened. Tokyo does that. Millions of footsteps. Endless trains. Light spilling from convenience stores at all hours. People disappear here quietly, without drama, without witnesses willing to swear they saw anything at all. But this one felt different. This one would rot in police archives for years, stamped with 2 words that still make investigators tense when they say them out loud. Cold case. Her name was Aiko Nakamura, 26 years old. Office worker. Marketing assistant at a mid-sized electronics firm in Shinjuku. No criminal record. No known enemies. No history of running away. On paper, she was unremarkable, which is exactly why her disappearance shook the people who knew her. Aiko left her office at 10:12 p.m., caught on a grainy security camera adjusting the strap of her bag, bowing slightly to a coworker she would never see again. She texted her sister at 10:31. Running late. Train crowded. That message would become a timestamp investigators would circle, underline, and argue over for the next 2 decades. The last confirmed sighting came from a convenience store clerk near Takadanobaba Station. A woman matching Aiko's description bought a bottle of tea and a pack of gum. The receipt printed at 11:42 p.m. 5 minutes later, the alley behind the store was empty. No blood. No broken belongings. No signs of a struggle. Just silence. Thick, uncomfortable silence that settled in and refused to leave. By morning, Tokyo woke up to another day. Rush hour trains screamed along their tracks. Umbrellas bloomed open like black flowers in the rain. And somewhere in a small apartment, Aiko's phone rang and rang until the battery died. The missing person report was filed at 9:06 a.m. Routine procedure, at first. Adults disappear all the time. Police asked the usual questions. Did she have financial problems? A secret relationship? Stress at work? Any reason at all to vanish voluntarily? The answers were all the same.
No. No. No.
Her apartment was neat.
Too neat, some said.
Laundry folded. Makeup arranged with care. Passport untouched. Bank account frozen in time. No unusual withdrawals. No desperate cash grabs. If Aiko had planned to disappear, she left nothing behind to suggest it. 3 days later, her face appeared on television screens across Japan. A still photo from a company party. Dark hair pulled back. A polite smile that now felt unsettling, as if it were hiding something everyone had missed. Tokyo woman missing under mysterious circumstances, the anchor said. Police urge anyone with information to come forward. They did come forward. Too many of them. Sightings flooded in from all over the city. A woman resembling Aiko on a train in Chiba. Someone who looked like her crossing a street in Shibuya. A waitress who swore she served her ramen 2 nights later. Every lead collapsed under scrutiny. Every witness grew less certain the more questions they were asked. Then the first strange details surfaced. Aiko's phone had briefly reconnected to the network at 2:18 a.m., nearly 3 hours after she vanished. A single signal pinged off a tower near the Sumida River. No call. No message. Just a silent heartbeat from a device that should have been dead. Investigators argued late into the night about what it meant. Was someone else carrying the phone? Had it been powered on accidentally? Or was Aiko, somehow, still alive at that moment? Search teams combed the riverbanks. Dredged shallow areas. Found nothing. No body. No phone. No answers. Weeks passed. Posters faded under the sun and rain. Aiko's case slipped from headlines to footnotes. Another unsolved disappearance in a city that rarely looks back. Inside the Metropolitan Police Department, her file grew thicker, heavier, more uncomfortable to open. Detectives retraced her final route again and again. Office to station. Station to convenience store. Convenience store to alley. That alley became the center of everything. A narrow stretch of concrete boxed in by buildings, poorly lit, easily overlooked. A perfect place for something terrible to happen quickly. But there were no cameras pointing there. No witnesses willing to swear they saw a crime. Just one elderly resident who mentioned hearing a noise, then immediately doubted herself when pressed. By the end of 2004, the investigation stalled. Manpower reassigned. Leads dried up. Aiko Nakamura's disappearance was officially reclassified. Unsolved. Cold. Years rolled on. Her family aged under the weight of not knowing. Her mother kept Aiko's room exactly the same, as if freezing time might bring her back. Her sister stopped watching the news altogether. And Tokyo kept moving. New buildings rose. Old alleys were repainted, repurposed, forgotten. The place where Aiko vanished became just another shadowed passage no one paid attention to anymore. Until, much later, someone would open that file again and realize something had been there all along. Something small. Something ignored. A detail that would turn a forgotten cold case into a shockwave that would rattle the city to its core. There was one detail in the file that no one wanted to talk about anymore, a single line buried beneath transcripts and time-stamped logs, written in the margin by a detective who retired before anyone thought to ask him why it mattered. It was a description, almost careless in its brevity. Allie smelled faintly of iron the next morning. Not blood, not violence, just iron. A word vague enough to be dismissed, ambiguous enough to be forgotten, yet it lingered like an aftertaste every time the folder was reopened, because iron meant something had been there, something organic, something that did not belong to rain or concrete, and the fact that it disappeared without leaving a trace was more disturbing than if blood had been found outright. In the weeks following Aiko Nakamura's disappearance, investigators canvassed the neighborhood repeatedly, knocking on doors, bowing politely, asking the same questions with the same careful tone that Japanese police are trained to use, knowing full well that politeness often becomes a barrier when fear takes root. Most residents claimed they had seen nothing, heard nothing, noticed nothing unusual, their memories blurring together under pressure, until the alley itself began to feel like a blind spot in the collective consciousness, a place people subconsciously avoided thinking about. But one resident, a night shift delivery driver who parked his truck nearby, mentioned something odd during a second interview, something he hadn't thought important at first, a parked car that didn't belong there. It was dark, he said, but the car stood out because it was clean, newer than the others, its engine off, hazard lights blinking faintly, as if the driver wanted to appear temporarily stranded. He couldn't recall the license plate. He couldn't even be certain of the color. Only that it was there, blocking part of the alley, narrowing the passage just enough that someone walking through would have to squeeze past it. When asked why he hadn't reported it earlier, the driver hesitated, then shrugged, saying cars were abandoned all the time in Tokyo, left overnight, retrieved by morning, nothing worth bothering the police about. That statement would haunt the investigation for years, because by the time officers returned to the alley to verify his account, the car was gone, erased as cleanly as Aiko herself. The theory of abduction gained traction quietly, discussed behind closed doors, never confirmed publicly because there was nothing concrete to anchor it to. No witnesses who could swear they saw force. No surveillance footage to replay in slow motion. Just a narrowing alley, a missing woman, and a city that offered too many escape routes to count. Detectives traced Aiko's social circle with methodical precision: co-workers, former classmates, casual acquaintances, anyone who might have crossed paths with her recently, but the deeper they dug, the more ordinary her life appeared. She worked late, commuted, went home, repeated the cycle, her phone records revealing no secret lover, no heated arguments, no sudden changes in behavior. Ordinary people do not vanish this way, and that was precisely what made the case feel wrong. Then came the anonymous tip, the kind that arrives without explanation and leaves more questions than answers. A call placed from a public phone box in Narama Ward, the voice low, distorted, refusing to give a name, claiming to have seen Aiko arguing with a man near the station on the night she disappeared. The caller described the man as tall, well-dressed, possibly middle-aged, his face partially obscured by the brim of a hat. When pressed for details, the line went dead. Police searched nearby phone boxes for fingerprints and found none usable, another dead end added to a growing list, another door slammed shut just as it seemed about to open. Public interest surged briefly, fueled by tabloids that speculated wildly, suggesting organized crime, workplace revenge, secret relationships, anything sensational enough to sell papers. Aiko's family watched helplessly as her image was dissected, her smile analyzed, her personal life turned into conjecture, while the investigation itself made no visible progress. Behind the scenes, detectives argued over priorities, resources stretched thin by newer cases, louder cases, cases with bodies and suspects and evidence that could be touched, measured, proven. Aiko Nakamura's disappearance slipped further down the list, not because it mattered less, but because it offered nothing to hold on to. By 2006, the case had cooled significantly, its file transferred to long-term storage, marked for periodic review, a bureaucratic way of admitting defeat without saying the word out loud. New detectives skimmed the records during training, shaking their heads at the lack of evidence, at the frustrating simplicity of the facts, at how easily a person could vanish in one of the most surveilled cities in the world. Tokyo, with all its cameras and lights, still had shadows deep enough to swallow someone whole. Yet something refused to let the case rest completely. Every few years, a new lead would surface, flimsy but tantalizing, pulling the file back into the light for a brief moment. A body discovered along the river, later identified as someone else. A woman resembling Aiko spotted abroad, debunked by dental records. A rumor of human trafficking dismissed after international cooperation turned up nothing. Each time, hope flared, then died, leaving investigators and family members a little more exhausted, a little more resigned to the possibility that the truth might never surface. Inside the department, the case earned an unspoken reputation, a quiet warning about overconfidence in systems and procedures. It became an example used in lectures, a reminder that technology alone could not prevent disappearance, that cities were living organisms with blind spots and gaps, places where timing and coincidence could conspire against even the most thorough surveillance. The alley behind the convenience store was eventually renovated, repainted, its cracked pavement smoothed over, a physical erasure that mirrored the fading urgency of the case itself. Time, however, has a way of changing the value of details. What once seemed insignificant can become critical when viewed through a different lens, when paired with advancements no one could have predicted back in 2003. Years later, a younger detective assigned to the cold case review unit would notice that marginal note about the smell of iron, would pause over the mention of a parked car with blinking hazard lights, would reread the transcript of the anonymous phone call, and feel an uncomfortable sense of alignment, as if pieces scattered across the file were quietly shifting closer together. He would not yet know what it meant, only that the case resisted being forgotten, that it carried a weight disproportionate to its paperwork. For Aiko's family, the passage of time did not dull the absence. Birthdays passed uncelebrated. Holidays carried an empty seat that no one acknowledged directly. Her mother continued to listen for footsteps at the door late at night, a habit that never quite faded, while her sister learned to live with a question mark where certainty should have been. The city moved on, but grief remained suspended, unresolved, frozen in the same moment Aiko stepped into that alley and vanished. Tokyo's skyline changed dramatically in the years that followed, glass towers replacing older structures, neighborhoods gentrified, streets rerouted, yet beneath the modern facade, the same alleys remained, narrow and quiet, witnesses that never spoke. Somewhere in those shadows, the truth lingered, bound to a sequence of events that had unfolded too quickly, too cleanly, leaving behind only fragments and speculation. The case stayed cold, officially unsolved, unofficially unsettling, a reminder that not all mysteries fade with time, some simply wait. And as technology advanced, as databases expanded, as old evidence gained new potential, the question began to shift from what happened to Aiko Nakamura to why this case, of all cases, refused to stay buried. The answer, still out of reach, hovered just beyond the edge of the records, promising that when it finally emerged, it would not bring comfort, only shock, and a reckoning long overdue for a city that believed it had seen everything. The cold case unit was a quiet place, tucked away from the urgency of active investigations, where files breathed dust and time moved differently, measured in years instead of hours. It was here that Aiko Nakamura's name surfaced again, not with fanfare, not with expectation, but with a faint click of curiosity when a junior detective cross-referenced old disappearance cases against a newly digitized database. He wasn't looking for her specifically. He was chasing patterns, similarities so small they escaped notice when cases were viewed in isolation, and Tokyo, with its decades of archived reports, offered an endless maze of them. What caught his attention was not the alley, not the phone ping, not even the anonymous call. It was the timing. Between 2001 and 2004, 5 women disappeared within a 30-kilometer radius of central Tokyo. Different wards, different ages, different routines. At first glance, nothing linked them, but all 5 vanished late at night, all within walking distance of major train stations, and all without leaving behind signs of struggle. For cases had been quietly resolved over the years, bodies eventually found, suspects identified, explanations filed away. Aiko's was the outlier, the one that didn't fit cleanly, the one that ended abruptly in the middle of the story. The detective began laying timelines side by side, dates marching across the screen like parallel lives that never touched. One case from 2002 stood out. A woman abducted near Ikebukuro Station, later found alive, shaken, unwilling to testify beyond a few fragmented statements. Her description of the encounter had been vague at the time, dismissed as trauma-induced confusion, but reread now, it felt uncomfortably specific. She spoke of a man who approached calmly, of a car parked with its hazard lights on, of a brief conversation that turned into a blur. The suspect in that case had been arrested years later for unrelated charges, his conviction closing the file without much scrutiny of the details he refused to discuss. When the detective requested the archived evidence from that case, the response was slow, bureaucratic, tinged with skepticism. Old files meant paperwork, meant reopening questions no one wanted asked. Still, the boxes arrived, heavy with reports and photographs that smelled faintly of paper and time. Inside, buried beneath procedural documents, was a photograph taken by chance, a traffic camera still image showing a sedan pulled halfway into an alley, hazard lights glowing like small, artificial stars in the dark. The timestamp read 11:39 p.m. The image sent a ripple through the unit. Hazard lights. Alley. Late night. The similarities were too precise to ignore, yet too circumstantial to announce. The suspect from the Ikebukuro case had an alibi for the night Aiko disappeared, at least on paper, corroborated by family members who insisted he'd been home. No physical evidence tied him to Takadanobaba. And yet, something about the alignment of details felt deliberate, as if the city itself were repeating a motif that only now became visible. Re-interviews began quietly, carefully. Witnesses from Aiko's case were contacted again, some surprised to be called after so many years, others visibly uncomfortable, their memories warped by time and retelling. The delivery driver hesitated before repeating his account of the parked car, his confidence lower now, his certainty eroded, but the image of blinking lights still lodged in his mind. It felt staged, he admitted, searching for the right word. Like it was meant to be there. That phrase was underlined in the new notes, circled twice, then starred. Technology had changed since 2003. Phone records once considered useless could now be analyzed with greater precision, triangulated, reconstructed. The single ping from Aiko's phone near the Sumida River was revisited, its coordinates plotted against known routes, traffic patterns, and signal anomalies. Analysts noticed something subtle. The ping did not align with a moving device. It was stationary, brief, as if the phone had been powered on deliberately, then shut down again. A signal, not a mistake. A message without words. Speculation grew within the unit, never spoken outside its walls. Could Aiko have been held somewhere? Could her phone have been kept as leverage, or as a tool to mislead? The absence of evidence no longer felt accidental. It felt curated. Clean scenes don't happen by chance. They are created by someone who knows what to remove and what to leave behind. The alley's lack of cameras, once attributed to oversight, now looked like opportunity. The investigation widened, pulling in data from vehicle registrations, parking violations, toll records, anything that might capture the ghost of a car moving through Tokyo that night. Thousands of records flooded in, overwhelming at first, then slowly narrowing as filters were applied. Sedans registered within certain wards. Vehicles linked to prior complaints near train stations. Cars reported abandoned overnight and retrieved by morning. Patterns emerged, faint but persistent, like fingerprints smudged across time. One vehicle surfaced repeatedly, not at crime scenes, but nearby, adjacent, close enough to be coincidence until coincidence stopped being a reasonable explanation. Registered to a man in his 40s, employed intermittently, no criminal record worth noting. In 2003, he lived less than 10 kilometers from where Aiko vanished. He had changed addresses multiple times since, drifting across wards, never settling long enough to draw attention. His name was unremarkable, easy to forget, which made it all the more unsettling to see it appear again and again. Surveillance was considered, then dismissed. There was nothing to justify it yet, nothing solid enough to warrant action. Cold cases walk a delicate line, move too fast, and you alert someone who has lived comfortably in the shadow of not being suspected. So the unit waited, gathering, comparing, building a quiet case that existed mostly in whispers and shared glances. For Aiko's family, the renewed activity remained invisible. No calls, no updates. They had learned not to hope, not to ask questions that could not be answered. To them, time had stretched into a single, endless year, marked only by anniversaries of absence. The city outside their windows felt foreign now, louder, faster, indifferent to a loss that never resolved. Inside the cold case unit, however, momentum was building. Each rediscovered detail added weight, shifting the narrative from disappearance to something darker, more intentional. The case was no longer an isolated mystery. It was becoming a node in a network of events that suggested planning, repetition, and restraint. Someone had operated within Tokyo's blind spots, exploiting predictability, blending into crowds, leaving behind just enough ambiguity to avoid pursuit. The question changed again, sharpening into something more dangerous. It was no longer what happened or who did it, but how many times and how long. If Aiko's disappearance was not unique, if it fit a pattern interrupted only by chance and partial survival, then the cold case represented more than a single tragedy. It hinted at a presence that had moved through the city undetected, patient, methodical, confident that time would do most of the work. As files were stacked higher and screens glowed late into the night, one realization settled over the unit like a chill. Cold cases are not dead. They are dormant. They wait for the moment when the world catches up to the truth they have been holding. And somewhere, possibly unaware, possibly watching, someone who believed himself invisible was about to feel the city's attention turn in his direction, the quiet closing in, the past beginning to speak. The name sat on the screen longer than anyone expected, not because it meant anything yet, but because it appeared too often to be ignored. Not in headlines. Not in police blotters. In margins. In proximity. A vehicle registration here. A parking violation there. A toll camera capture at the edge of a time window that mattered. The man attached to it lived most of his life just outside the frame, close enough to touch events without ever stepping fully into them, and that, to the cold case unit, was its own kind of signature. He was 43 in 2003, divorced, no children, a history of short-term jobs that placed him near transportation hubs, night security, freelance courier work, occasional subcontracting for logistics companies. Nothing illegal. Nothing that raised alarms. His sedan, however, had been reported parked overnight in restricted zones multiple times between 2001 and 2004, always near train stations, always late, always retrieved before morning commuters flooded the streets. Each incident alone meant nothing. Together, they formed a rhythm. Investigators began reconstructing his movements, not with the urgency of a manhunt, but with the patience of archivists assembling a story backward. Credit card records showed sporadic purchases at convenience stores close to the locations of several disappearances. Gas receipts clustered around late-night hours. None of it placed him definitively at Takadanobaba on the night Aiko vanished, but absence can be deceptive. It often hides in the spaces between records. The more they looked, the clearer it became that his life intersected with the city at its quietest moments, when crowds thinned and routines softened. A review of older witness statements yielded a subtle shift in tone. The woman abducted near Ikebukuro had initially described her attacker as polite, almost apologetic, speaking calmly, offering help before exerting control. At the time, that detail had seemed irrelevant, even contradictory to common assumptions about violent crime. Now, it felt deliberate, part of a method designed to lower defenses rather than shatter them. Predators who shout attract attention. Those who whisper disappear. The cold case unit requested a psychological profile, not to accuse but to understand. The report that came back was cautious, filled with qualifiers and conditionals, yet one line stood out. Subject likely values control and anonymity, avoids overt violence, relies on situational advantage. control, anonymity, situational advantage. The alley behind the convenience store fit those words too neatly. As investigators quietly compiled their findings, they encountered resistance, not from the public, but from within. Reopening dormant cases requires justification, resources, permission to disturb settled narratives. There were questions about statute limitations, about the likelihood of actionable evidence after so many years. Some argued that focusing on a single suspect based on pattern recognition risked confirmation bias. Others countered that ignoring patterns was how predators survived unnoticed. The debate simmered, unresolved, until a new piece of information tipped the balance. In 2018, a redevelopment project uncovered a storage unit beneath an old commercial building slated for demolition near the Sumida River. Inside, workers found personal items, women's accessories, scarves, jewelry, stored carefully, almost reverently, in sealed containers. No bodies. No obvious evidence of violence. Just objects divorced from their owners, cataloged by someone who understood their value as keepsakes. Police were notified. The items were logged, photographed, and cross-referenced against missing persons reports. One scarf stopped the room cold. Aiko's sister recognized it instantly when shown the photograph, her reaction immediate, visceral. She had given it to Aiko years earlier, a gift from a trip they had taken together, distinctive in its pattern, impossible to confuse. The scarf became the first physical link between Aiko Nakamura and a location beyond the alley, beyond speculation. It was also the first moment in 15 years that her case felt tangible again. The storage unit had been rented under a false name, paid in cash, but surveillance from nearby streets captured partial images of vehicles entering and exiting the area during late-night hours. Among them was a familiar sedan, its outline matching the one that had haunted the investigation. The man's name returned to the forefront, no longer a coincidence, no longer a peripheral presence. Still, there was caution. Possession of an item did not prove murder. It proved contact. It proved opportunity. It proved secrecy. When detectives approached him for a preliminary interview, they did so under the guise of routine questioning related to the storage unit, careful not to reveal the full scope of what they knew. He was cooperative, calm, almost relieved to speak. He claimed he had found the scarf years earlier, abandoned near a station, kept it without thinking, a souvenir of a moment he couldn't fully explain. His story was thin, implausible, yet delivered with such composure that it unsettled the room. People who lie badly show cracks. People who lie well make you question your own assumptions. The interview ended without arrest. There wasn't enough. Not yet. But the shift was irreversible. Aiko's case was no longer a closed chapter. It was an active investigation again, its coldness thawing under the pressure of new context and long-delayed connections. The city, unaware, continued its routines, while beneath the surface, something old stirred, forced back into the light. For the cold case unit, the realization settled heavily. They were no longer chasing a disappearance. They were circling a life, a pattern, a man who had learned how to exist in the gaps between attention and neglect. Every year, he remained free added weight to the question of what else he had done, what else he had hidden, how many stories ended without names or headlines. The alley behind the convenience store was visited again, its walls cleaner now, its darkness less pronounced, yet the geometry unchanged. Standing there, detectives imagined the hazard lights blinking, imagined a calm voice offering help, imagined a moment of hesitation that changed everything. The city had moved on, but the space remembered. Spaces always do. And as paperwork turned into warrants, and warrants edged closer to action, the knowledge spread quietly through the department. This cold case, once an example of defeat, was becoming a test of whether time truly protects those who rely on it, or whether, eventually, it betrays them, peeling back layers until only the truth remains, exposed and unavoidable. Once the scarf entered evidence, the investigation changed its posture, without announcing it had done so. Doors that had been politely knocked on were now leaned against. Questions that once circled now pressed inward. The man with the sedan sensed it before anyone said his name aloud in a meeting room. People who live by anonymity develop a sensitivity to attention, a way of feeling when the air around them tightens. He adjusted his routines. Paid cash more often. Traveled less at night. Small changes, subtle, but visible to those who were finally watching. The cold case unit moved deliberately, knowing momentum could become its own enemy. They traced the scarf's fibers, not because they expected DNA after so many years, but because fibers tell stories about movement, about where an object has been and what it brushed against along the way. Microscopic particles embedded in the weave matched dust samples from the Sumida River area, consistent with long-term storage in a damp, enclosed space. It didn't prove when Aiko had last worn it. It didn't prove how it got there. But it anchored the object in a geography that no longer felt theoretical. A search warrant for the man's current residence was drafted, revised, debated, revised again. The legal threshold hovered just out of reach, a constant frustration. Pattern, proximity, possession compelling, but still circumstantial. What the case needed was friction, something to break the smooth surface he presented to the world. Investigators turned back to people, not data, and began quietly re-interviewing women who had crossed his path over the years, colleagues, neighbors, casual acquaintances whose names appeared in his phone records or employment histories. At first, nothing. Then hesitation. Then a pause long enough to mean something. One former coworker recalled a ride home offered late one night, a detour taken without explanation, the car idling in a narrow street while he made a call she couldn't hear. She had felt uncomfortable, she said, but nothing overt had happened, nothing she could point to as criminal. Another woman mentioned his habit of collecting small items, hair ties, keychains, dismissed at the time as quirks, now reinterpreted under a harsher light. Individually, the accounts lacked force. Together, they suggested a familiarity with boundaries that stopped just short of crossing them in ways that could be reported. The break came from an unexpected direction. A technician reviewing old mobile carrier archives flagged an anomaly connected to Aiko's phone ping near the Sumida River. At 2:18 a.m., the signal appeared stationary, as previously noted, but its duration was shorter than standard activation logs suggested it should have been. The phone had not been fully powered on. It had been woken briefly, enough to connect, then shut down. This wasn't accidental. It required intent, a finger pressing a button with purpose. Cross-referencing that micro-window with traffic data revealed a vehicle passing through a nearby toll gate minutes later, heading away from the river. The image was blurred, the plate unreadable, but the vehicle's profile matched the sedan investigators had been circling for months. Not proof.
Not yet.
But it was alignment, time, place, movement, converging tightly enough to make coincidence feel like an insult to logic. They brought the man in again, this time with more weight behind the questions. The interview room was neutral, deliberately unthreatening, its walls designed to give nothing back. He sat comfortably, legs crossed, hands folded, answering politely, his tone steady. When asked about the Sumida River area in 2003, he smiled faintly, said he enjoyed driving at night, found it calming, a way to clear his head. When asked about the phone ping, his eyes flickered, just once, a micro-expression so brief it might have been imagined, except 3 people in the room noticed it simultaneously. Pressure was applied incrementally. Not accusations, just facts, laid out in an order that narrowed options. The scarf. The storage unit. The traffic image. The overlapping timelines. He countered with explanations that were plausible in isolation, less so in sequence. Found items. Coincidences. Mistaken identities. The interview stretched on, then ended without arrest, but something had shifted. He was no longer relaxed. Control, once his strongest asset, was beginning to slip. Surveillance was authorized. Plainclothes officers followed him through the city, blending into crowds, learning his habits, mapping his comfort zones. He frequented the same convenience stores, walked the same routes, avoided the same alleys. Patterns reasserted themselves under observation, and with them came a growing sense of inevitability. People who rely on routine to feel safe often underestimate how readable routine becomes once someone decides to read it. Meanwhile, the cold case unit reopened another file long thought settled, a disappearance from 2004 that had ended in a presumed accidental death. The victim's belongings had never been fully accounted for. Among them, a bracelet remarkably similar in style to several items found in the storage unit. Re-examination of the original scene photos revealed inconsistencies previously attributed to poor documentation. A second chance at scrutiny brought new questions, and with them, a quiet realization that the number of connected cases might be larger than anyone wanted to admit. For Aiko's family, the silence persisted, punctuated only by formal notifications that the case status had changed. Active again. Under review. No promises. No timelines. Her sister oscillated between hope and dread, aware that answers, when they come, rarely arrive clean. Truth has edges. It cuts. The city, too, seemed to respond in subtle ways. Media outlets caught wind of renewed activity, careful language appearing in late-night broadcasts, phrases like possible developments and long-dormant case revisited. The words cold case resurfaced, spoken with caution, as if the term itself carried weight. Online forums speculated, connecting us wildly, unaware of how close they skirted the actual shape of events. Inside the investigation, the focus narrowed further. The storage unit became a focal point, its contents recatalogued with obsessive detail. Each item was photographed, measured, tested, compared against missing persons databases domestically and abroad. Names began to align. Stories began to overlap. The scope of what had once seemed like a single vanishing expanded into something more complex, more disturbing, a mosaic of absences stitched together by chance and patience. The man noticed the surveillance eventually. A glance held too long. A reflection that appeared twice. His movements grew erratic. He drove aimlessly at night, doubling back, testing whether the city would reveal who watched him. It did not. Tokyo is good at hiding things, including those who hide others. The watchers watched. The watched grew uneasy. In one late-night drive, he stopped near the Sumida River, parked briefly, hazard lights blinking in the dark. Officers noted the behavior, their pulses quickening, the past bleeding into the present in a way that felt almost theatrical. He did not exit the vehicle. He did not linger. He drove on, but the gesture was enough. A reenactment, intentional or not, a crack in the facade of control. By the end of that week, the decision was made. The evidence, while still largely circumstantial, had crossed an internal threshold. Warrants were approved. A coordinated operation was planned, quiet and precise, designed to prevent destruction of evidence and minimize spectacle. Cold cases do not end with sirens. They end with paperwork and doors closing softly. As officers prepared, one thought circulated unspoken through the unit. If this man was responsible, if the pattern held, then Aiko Nakamura's disappearance was not an anomaly. It was a moment within a larger design, one that had relied on time as its greatest ally. Time had almost won. Almost. The city slept, unaware that beneath its calm surface, a long-frozen story was approaching the point where it could no longer remain still, where the past would press forward, demanding to be acknowledged, regardless of the cost. The arrest did not come with raised voices or flashing lights. It arrived the way cold cases often do, quietly, almost politely, wrapped in procedure and timing. At 6:14 a.m., while Tokyo's first trains began to fill with commuters still half asleep, officers knocked on the door of the man's apartment and waited, hands relaxed, posture neutral, every movement calculated to avoid turning suspicion into panic. When he opened the door, he looked unsurprised, as if he had been expecting this moment for years, as if the weight of being watched had finally found a name. He was informed of the warrant. Search and seizure. Questioning related to multiple missing persons investigations. The words were precise, measured, intentionally narrow. No accusations yet. No declarations of guilt. Just the legal framework closing in. He nodded once, stepped aside, allowed them in. control, even now, mattered to him. The apartment was clean. Not minimalist, but deliberate. Furniture arranged with care. No clutter. No visible trophies. Investigators moved through the space methodically, photographing, cataloging, touching nothing without gloves. In a closet, behind winter coats rarely used, they found boxes identical to those discovered in the storage unit.
Sealed.
Labeled only with dates. Inside, more personal items. Scarves. Earrings. Small bags. Each object carried a story that had been interrupted mid-sentence. In the kitchen, taped beneath a drawer, was a folded piece of paper. A list of train stations. Times written in neat handwriting. Some crossed out. Some circled. The dates corresponded disturbingly well with known disappearances and near misses. It was not a confession. It did not need to be. It was a map of intent. As he was escorted out of the building, neighbors watched from behind curtains, confusion flickering across their faces. He was the quiet man, the one who bowed politely in the hallway, the one who never caused trouble. Arrests shock communities not because they reveal monsters, but because they reveal how close monsters can live without being noticed. By mid-morning, news alerts began to vibrate across phones throughout the city. Unexpected arrest linked to long-running cold cases. The phrase spread quickly, stripped of context, amplified by speculation. Inside the interrogation room, the atmosphere was controlled, almost calm. He sat across from detectives who had spent years thinking about him, imagining this conversation, rehearsing questions in their heads long before they were allowed to ask them out loud. They began with the innocuous. Work history. Addresses. Routine. He answered smoothly, confidently, as if reciting a well-practiced script. When the conversation shifted toward 2003, toward Takeda Nobaba, toward Aiko Nakamura, the air tightened. He denied knowing her, denied seeing her, denied involvement. His voice did not waver. His eyes remained steady. Lies, when told often enough, can take on the rhythm of truth. Detectives let the denial stand, moved on, then returned, circling, changing angles, applying pressure not through confrontation but through accumulation. The scarf. The storage unit. The phone ping. The list of stations. Each detail was placed on the table one by one, not as accusations, but as realities that existed regardless of what he chose to say. Something shifted when they mentioned the Sumida River. He leaned back, exhaled slowly, a gesture so small it might have been missed, except the room had been trained to notice small things. He said nothing for several seconds. Silence can be louder than denial. When he spoke again, his words were careful, almost philosophical. People assume disappearance requires violence, he said. Sometimes it only requires opportunity. The line was noted, quoted. It would appear in headlines later, stripped of nuance, transformed into something colder. In the room, it landed differently, confirming what the investigation had long suspected. This was not chaos. It was design. For hours, the interrogation continued. He admitted to finding items, admitted to keeping them, claimed fascination, curiosity, a compulsion he struggled to explain. He did not admit to killing anyone.
He did not need to.
Physical evidence, once fragmented, now formed a lattice strong enough to hold weight. Warrants expanded. Charges multiplied. The case moved from possibility to probability to something approaching certainty. Outside, the city reacted in waves. News crews gathered near police headquarters. Commentators spoke in urgent tones about safety, about trust, about how such a pattern could exist undetected for so long. Online forums erupted, dissecting every leaked detail, naming suspects prematurely, demanding answers that could not yet be given. The words cold case trended, paired with phrases like finally broken and years of silence. Shock traveled faster than truth ever could. For Aiko's family, the call came late in the afternoon. Formal, cautious. The case, they were told, had progressed significantly. A suspect was in custody. Details would follow. Her sister sat down slowly, the room spinning, relief and terror colliding in a way that made it hard to breathe. Answers were closer now, but answers come with consequences, with images and facts that cannot be unlearned. Closure is not the same as peace. In the days that followed, more connections surfaced. Items from the apartment matched missing persons reports from outside Tokyo, extending the pattern geographically, complicating jurisdiction, raising questions about how far and how often the man had traveled. Each match brought a family back into the orbit of uncertainty, reopening wounds they had learned to live around. The investigation expanded outward like ripples, each one touching another life. Detectives returned to the alley behind the convenience store, this time with clarity. The geometry made sense now. The lack of cameras. The narrowing caused by a parked car. The brief window of time between purchase and disappearance. It was not chance. It was a selection. A moment engineered to appear mundane. Predators survive by making their actions look ordinary. Under questioning, the man remained composed, but cracks appeared. He corrected detectives on minor details they hadn't mentioned, revealing knowledge he shouldn't have had. He referred to locations by names no longer in use, betraying the depth of his familiarity. Each slip tightened the net, each correction another thread pulled loose from the fabric of his control. Charges were formally announced. Unlawful confinement, evidence tampering, possession of stolen property, additional counts pending. Murder was not among them yet. That absence echoed loudly, reminding everyone that even now, even with an arrest, some truths remained out of reach. Bodies had not been found. Confessions had not been given. Cold cases do not warm evenly. Some parts thaw faster than others. Tokyo watched, stunned, as the narrative shifted. A case once defined by absence was now defined by presence. A man, a face, a history. The shock did not come from the idea that evil existed, but from the realization that it had blended so well, used politeness as camouflage, routine as shelter. Trust, once fractured, does not repair easily. In custody, stripped of his anonymity, the man seemed smaller, less certain. Control had slipped beyond recovery. Yet even then, he guarded something, held something back, a final layer of secrecy that investigators could feel but not yet breach. Aiko Nakamura's name hovered at the center of it all, a reminder that arrests are not endings, only thresholds. As night fell, the city lights reflected off rain-slick streets, the same streets that had swallowed someone whole years earlier. The cold case was no longer cold. It was exposed, fragile, alive with unanswered questions. And as the suspect sat alone in a cell, listening to the distant hum of a city he thought he understood, the past pressed in from all sides, patient no longer, ready to demand what time had almost succeeded in hiding. The first confession did not arrive as a confession. It surfaced as a correction, the kind people offer reflexively when the story being told does not match the version they carry in their heads. During a late-night interrogation session, after hours of repetition and silence, a detective mentioned the convenience store purchase, the bottle of tea, the pack of gum, the receipt timestamp frozen at 11:42 p.m. The man listened, eyes half-lidded, then shook his head almost imperceptibly. It was barley tea, he said. Not bottled. It was from the dispenser. The room went still. That detail had never been released. It had never been leaked. It existed only in internal notes and a blurry reflection caught in the glass of the store cooler. He realized his mistake seconds later, lips pressing together, control reasserting itself too late to matter. From that moment on, the tone changed. Detectives stopped trying to elicit admissions and focused instead on letting him talk. People who need control often fill silence with explanations, and explanations become narratives, and narratives reveal structure. He spoke about Tokyo at night, about how the city softened after midnight, how crowds thinned and faces blurred into anonymity. He spoke about timing, about how a few minutes could mean the difference between being seen and being invisible. He never said Aiko's name. He did not need to. She hovered in the room regardless. When pressed about the alley, he offered an observation rather than a denial. People don't notice what they pass every day, he said. They assume it will be there tomorrow. The detective across from him wrote the sentence down slowly, aware that it described not just a place, but a philosophy. The alley had been his constant, unchanged while everything else evolved, a fixed point in a city that prided itself on motion. Forensic teams worked in parallel, revisiting every item seized, every box, every list. On one of the notebooks recovered from his apartment, faint impressions were discovered beneath later writing, words pressed hard enough to leave ghosts on the page. Under specialized lighting, names emerged, partial at first, then clearer. Some matched missing persons reports. Some did not. Those that did not open new files, new questions, new avenues of grief waiting to be rediscovered. The investigation widened again, spilling beyond Tokyo, beyond the boundaries initially imagined. Transportation records revealed patterns of travel during long weekends, overnight trips that coincided with disappearances in neighboring prefectures. The man's calm demeanor fractured slightly as detectives began to reference places he had never mentioned, stations he had not been asked about, routes he thought belonged only to him. Each time, his surprise was measured, restrained, but it accumulated, eroding the certainty that had sustained him. Public reaction intensified as details leaked, distorted, and amplified through speculation. The phrase serial abductor appeared in bold letters across screens, debated endlessly by commentators who lacked the patience for nuance. Was he a killer? A collector? Something in between? The absence of bodies fueled both fear and denial. Without remains, some clung to the hope that victims might still be alive somewhere, an idea investigators knew was unlikely, but not impossible enough to dismiss outright. For Aiko's family, the days blurred together. Meetings with police alternated between clarity and ambiguity. Yes, there was a suspect. Yes, evidence connected him to her belongings. No, they could not yet say what had happened to her. No, they could not yet say where she was. The not knowing, sharpened by proximity to answers, hurt more than the years of silence ever had. Hope, once distant, is dangerous when it draws close. In custody, the man's routines unraveled. Sleep came unevenly. Meals were left half-finished. During one interview, he asked casually whether the alley behind the convenience store had changed much over the years. The question was noted, another unprompted reach toward a place he pretended held no significance. Detectives responded noncommittally, refusing to feed his curiosity. Control thrives on feedback. They gave him none. A breakthrough arrived from a source so mundane, it almost went unnoticed. A review of landfill records from the early 2000s revealed irregular disposal activity near the Sumida River following the night of Aiko's disappearance. Construction waste permits had been issued, materials dumped, then covered within a narrow time frame. Ground-penetrating radar was authorized. The decision carried weight. Disturbing land is not done lightly, especially without certainty. But the alignment of dates, locations, and recovered items justified the risk. The scans revealed anomalies. Shapes inconsistent with debris. Voids where soil density changed abruptly. Excavation began under strict conditions, media kept at a distance, information tightly controlled. Each layer removed felt like peeling back time itself, exposing decisions made quickly, confidently, under the assumption they would never be revisited. As digging progressed, the man was informed, not as a threat, but as a fact. His reaction was the most telling yet. He closed his eyes. Just for a moment. Long enough to suggest resignation, not fear. "You won't find what you're looking for," he said quietly. The statement was ambiguous, balanced between defiance and truth. Investigators wrote it down anyway. Everything mattered now. The city held its breath. Rumors spread faster than confirmations, social media filling the gaps with imagination. Helicopters hovered at a distance, their presence a reminder that even the quietest cases eventually draw noise. Tokyo, so accustomed to movement, paused, its attention fixed on a patch of ground by a river it crossed every day without thinking. In the interrogation room, the man spoke less. Silence reclaimed its place. Detectives waited him out, understanding that patience had always been his weapon, and now it would be theirs. Cold cases teach you that endings are rarely sudden. They unfold incrementally, revelation by revelation, each one reframing what came before. As night fell again, excavators paused, their work unfinished, the anomalies still partially buried. No announcements were made.
No conclusions drawn.
The truth, whatever shape it would take, remained just out of reach, suspended between past and present, between denial and admission. And somewhere in the city, in an apartment that had not been touched since 2003, Aiko Nakamura's room waited as it always had, unchanged, holding space for a future that never arrived, unaware that the ground beneath the city was finally being asked to give up what it had kept hidden for so long. The excavation resumed at dawn, when the city was still negotiating its way into consciousness, when the river lay flat and indifferent, reflecting a sky that offered no hints. Engineers worked slowly, deliberately, every scoop of earth measured, photographed, logged. This was not a search driven by urgency anymore. It was a conversation with the past, one that required patience and restraint. Each layer removed carried the possibility of answers, and with it, the risk of finality. The first object emerged just after mid-morning. Not bone, not clothing. A fragment of synthetic fabric, torn, compressed, stained by years underground. It did not belong to construction debris. It did not belong to the soil. Forensic analysts froze the scene, documenting angles and depth, sealing the moment before interpretation could outrun evidence. The fabric matched none of the items recovered from the storage unit, yet its weave suggested mass production from the early 2000s, a detail small enough to mean nothing, large enough to matter. As the dig continued, more fragments surfaced. A cracked phone casing. Unidentifiable metal pieces, warped by pressure and moisture. The absence of a body grew louder with each find, the void shaping expectations more forcefully than discovery ever could. Investigators understood the implication immediately. This was not a burial site. It was a disposal point. Something passed through here briefly, deliberately, never meant to stay. The man was informed again, this time with photographs placed carefully in front of him. He studied them without expression, eyes tracing edges, surfaces, details that only someone with intimate knowledge would recognize. Rivers change, he said after a long pause. They erase mistakes. It was unclear whether he meant the river or himself. The statement was logged, dissected, added to a growing archive of language that revealed more through metaphor than admission. Analysis of the phone casing yielded a partial serial number. Cross-referencing took days, databases churning through years of records, discarded devices, lost property reports. Eventually, a match surfaced, a model consistent with Aiko's phone, sold in Tokyo months before her disappearance. It was not definitive. Serial numbers repeat. Casings are interchangeable. But the alignment tightened the circle, narrowing the space in which doubt could comfortably exist. Media pressure intensified as whispers leaked. Helicopters returned. Reporters speculated openly. Cameras pointed toward the riverbank as if visibility alone could force the truth to surface. Authorities maintained silence, issuing statements carefully worded to confirm nothing and deny nothing. Cold cases do not end well under spotlights. They end when evidence is allowed to speak without interruption. Inside the interrogation room, time stretched. The man grew quieter, his earlier philosophical tone replaced by something closer to fatigue. Control had not vanished, but it had thinned, like ice under repeated pressure. Detectives shifted tactics, introducing empathy not as a trick, but as an option. They spoke of families waiting, of years suspended in uncertainty, of the possibility that truth, however late, could still mean something. He listened. He did not respond. A forensic report returned with an unexpected detail. Traces of industrial lubricant were found on the recovered metal fragments, a type commonly used in freight elevators and loading docks. The implication reframed assumptions about movement, about where transitions occurred. Aiko may not have gone directly from alley to river. There are spaces in between, controlled environments designed for anonymity, places where noise was expected and questions were not asked. Investigators mapped logistics hubs active in 2003 within driving distance of the Sumida River, cross-referencing employment records, access logs, night shift rosters. One location overlapped with the man's work history, a warehouse he had briefly been assigned to during that period. Records were incomplete. Time had eroded documentation. Still, the overlap added depth to a theory already heavy with inference. When confronted with the warehouse, he smiled faintly, a reflexive expression that did not reach his eyes. "I forgot about that place," he said. Forgetting, investigators knew, is rarely accidental. It is selective. It preserves what serves and discards what threatens. The warehouse was scheduled for inspection, another site added to a growing list of places the city would be forced to revisit. For Aiko's sister, updates arrived in fragments, filtered through careful language. Possible connections. Ongoing analysis. No confirmation yet. Each call left her suspended between anticipation and dread, the space between answers shrinking without delivering resolution. She returned often to the memory of the last text message, the ordinary words that now carried unbearable weight. Running late. Train crowded. The banality of it felt cruel in hindsight. As days turned into weeks, the investigation's scope expanded beyond any single outcome. Even if Aiko's fate remained partially obscured, the pattern was undeniable. Items recovered from different locations matched multiple disappearances, weaving a network of loss that stretched across years. The man's silence, once an assertion of power, now read as containment, an effort to limit damage rather than deny reality outright. In one interview, when asked whether he thought about the people connected to the objects he kept, he answered honestly for the first time. "I thought about time," he said, "how it moves for some people and stops for others." The lines settled heavily in the room. It was not remorse. It was observation. A worldview shaped by distance rather than empathy. The warehouse inspection yielded no remains, but it yielded residue, traces consistent with temporary confinement. Restraint marks on old fixtures, scuffed floors and patterns that told stories without words. The absence of bodies persisted, reinforcing the unsettling possibility that final locations lay elsewhere, perhaps beyond reach, perhaps lost to processes designed to erase. Tokyo absorbed the news in stages, the initial shock giving way to a quieter unease. Trust in the ordinary cracked. Alleys were avoided. Late-night offers of help were declined. The city adjusted its behavior, subtly, unconsciously, as if responding to a threat it could not fully articulate. As investigators compiled their findings, one truth became unavoidable. Even with an arrest, even with evidence, some questions would remain unanswered. Cold cases thaw unevenly, revealing fragments while withholding closure. The past does not surrender everything simply because it is asked. The river flowed on, indifferent to attention, carrying reflections of a city that had begun to look back at itself. Somewhere within that reflection lingered the outline of a woman who stepped into an alley one night and never emerged, her story now entangled with others, her absence no longer isolated, but part of a larger reckoning that refused to end cleanly. And as the man sat in custody, surrounded by the echoes of places he thought forgotten, the distance between what he knew and what he was willing to say narrowed, the silence growing heavier by the day, promising that whatever came next would not be simple and would not be gentle. The city has learned to live with the silence, but the silence has never learned to live with the city, and it presses in now heavier than ever, because every time the case resurfaces, it does so with a promise that sounds almost cruel in its familiarity. This time, something has changed. It begins again in the small hours before dawn, when a single light burns in an evidence room that has not been properly reorganized since the early 2000s, when files were still paper, when digital backups were a luxury, when mistakes could be hidden in the weight of cardboard boxes and the dust that gathered on their lids. A junior analyst, too young to remember the night of the crime, flips through logs that have been scanned and rescanned, noticing gaps that were never flagged, noticing that the timestamps don't quite line up, that an item logged at 3:12 a.m. appears again at 2:47, as if time itself stuttered under the strain of what happened back then. It is not a breakthrough. Not yet, but it is the kind of detail that refuses to be ignored once seen, the kind that keeps you awake after your shift ends, replaying numbers and handwritten initials in your head like a half-remembered tune. Back in 2003, those numbers were everything. They marked the last confirmed moments, the last known movements, the thin thread connecting the victim to the rest of the living world. Surveillance cameras blinked on and off, grainy images capturing a figure crossing a street, a shadow pausing under a flickering streetlight, a reflection in a shop window that might have been nothing and might have been everything. Investigators watched those tapes until their eyes ached, until faces blurred into shapes, until they started seeing meaning where there was none and missing it where it mattered most. Years later, those same images are viewed again, frame by frame, by people who were not there the first time, who carry none of the exhaustion or emotional residue of those initial weeks, and that distance becomes its own tool, its own dangerous advantage. The community remembers the fear more clearly than the facts. They remember the nights when parents walked their children home even from the corner store, when bars closed earlier, when trains felt quieter despite being just as full. They remember how quickly rumors spread, how every unfamiliar face became a potential suspect, how lives were rearranged around an absence that could not be explained. In interviews recorded long after the headlines faded, residents speak about a sound they can't name, a tension that hummed in the background of daily life, as if the city itself was holding its breath. That sound returns now, faint but unmistakable, as old names are spoken again in new contexts. One of those names belongs to a witness who was dismissed early on, a night shift delivery driver whose route placed him near the scene within minutes of the estimated time of death. His statement was short, unremarkable, filed and forgotten. He said he saw nothing unusual, heard nothing out of place. In 2003, that was enough to move on. In the present, his alibi is reconstructed with modern tools, GPS data pulled from archived fleet records, traffic patterns modeled with software that did not exist at the time. The reconstruction shows something unsettling, a gap of 7 minutes that cannot be accounted for. 7 minutes in which the delivery truck appears to vanish from the map, as if swallowed by the city's blind spots. It could be a technical error. It could be nothing. Or it could be the most important 7 minutes in the entire case. When investigators knock on his door again, years later, he is older, heavier, slower to answer. His hair is gray at the temples, his eyes wary in a way that suggests he has waited for this moment without ever admitting it, even to himself. He repeats his story, almost word for word, but the cadence is different now, the pauses slightly longer, the confidence thinner. He explains the gap with a shrug, says the system must have glitched, says he remembers stopping for coffee, or maybe to use a restroom, he isn't sure. Memory, after all, is a fragile thing, especially when it has been left alone for 2 decades. The interview ends without an arrest, without raised voices, without anything that could be called a confession, but the room feels heavier when the detectives leave, as if they have carried something out with them that does not belong. Elsewhere, a different thread is being pulled. A box mislabeled in storage contains clothing that was never fully tested, not because of negligence, but because of limitations. In 2003, the samples were too degraded, the technology too crude. Now, with advanced DNA amplification techniques, technicians extract profiles from fibers that once seemed useless. The results come back partial, frustratingly incomplete, but they exclude more people than they include, narrowing the field in a way that had never been possible before. Names are crossed off lists that were once sacred, suspects that defined entire theories quietly erased with the stroke of a pen. It is progress that feels like loss, because every exclusion is a reminder of how close they might have been, how much time has slipped through their fingers. The media senses movement and descends with familiar hunger. Headlines revive phrases that have not been printed in years. Cold case, mysterious disappearance, unanswered questions. Reporters camp outside police headquarters, asking about developments that cannot be confirmed, speculating about arrests that have not been made. For the family, the attention is a double-edged blade. It brings hope, but it also reopens wounds that never truly healed. They sit through interviews, repeating the same details, the same memories, their voices steady, but their eyes betraying the cost. They have learned not to expect closure, not to trust promises, but they cannot stop listening when someone says, "We're closer than we've ever been." Behind closed doors, disagreements surface. Some investigators believe the case is finally bending toward resolution, that the combination of new technology and fresh eyes will do what brute force and intuition could not. Others warn against overconfidence, against forcing patterns where none exist, against mistaking activity for progress. They point to the history of the investigation, to the false leads that once seemed just as promising, to the suspects who came within inches of arrest before collapsing under scrutiny. The tension between optimism and caution becomes its own kind of stalemate, echoing the original crime in its refusal to be neatly resolved. A retired detective, brought back as a consultant, reviews the files with a bitterness softened by time. He recognizes his own handwriting in the margins, notes he scribbled late at night when the case consumed everything else. He admits mistakes he could not see back then, assumptions he made because the pressure to deliver answers was relentless. He talks about one lead he regrets abandoning, a call that came in weeks after the crime from someone who claimed to have overheard a conversation in a bar, a detail that did not fit any existing theory and was therefore set aside. The caller was never identified, never called again. In the present, that lead is re-examined, traced to a bar that no longer exists, to a neighborhood transformed beyond recognition. The trail ends in silence, but the regret lingers. As the weeks pass, the investigation accelerates and stalls in uneven bursts. A promising DNA comparison fails to meet the threshold for certainty. A financial record suggests a motive that evaporates under scrutiny. A witness recants, then recants the recantation. Each development pushes the story forward and pulls it back at the same time, creating a sense of motion without destination. For those involved, the case becomes a constant background hum, an unresolved chord that colors everything else. Late one night, alone in the office, a detective listens again to an old voicemail left on an anonymous tip line in 2003. The voice is distorted, the words clipped, the accent impossible to place. At the time, it was dismissed as a prank. Now, with enhanced audio tools, the background noise is isolated, revealing a sound that matches a specific train line, a specific stretch of track near the scene. It is a detail so small it feels absurd, but in a case built on fragments, absurdity and hope often occupy the same space. The file is flagged, added to a growing list of maybes that refuse to resolve into certainties. The closer the investigation gets to the present, the more unstable the past becomes, as if the weight of unanswered years has begun to crack under its own pressure, and what spills out is not clarity, but contradiction. Files once thought dormant now feel restless, their pages curling slightly as they are handled again, their edges worn thin by hands that believed, once upon a time, that the truth was already somewhere inside. In a narrow conference room lit by fluorescent bulbs that hum like insects, detectives pin timelines to the wall, overlapping old assumptions with new data, watching as neat lines begin to tangle, intersect, and in some cases collapse entirely. The case is no longer a straight path that ends in darkness. It is a maze whose walls keep shifting the closer you get to the center. One theory that dominated the early years quietly disintegrates. The supposed motive, once repeated in every briefing and every headline, cannot survive the scrutiny of updated financial records and newly accessible communications data. Transactions once considered suspicious are revealed to be ordinary, their timing coincidental rather than conspiratorial. Phone calls that seemed incriminating lose their menace when placed against a broader pattern of contact. A suspect who lived for years under a cloud of suspicion is finally, decisively cleared. There is relief in the room when the decision is made official, but it is a hollow relief because it comes paired with the realization that the case has lost one of its few anchors. With that anchor gone, everything feels adrift again. At the same time, a different name rises from the margins. It is not new, but it was never central, never bolded or circled in red. It belonged to someone who brushed against the case only briefly, someone whose connection seemed too thin to pursue when resources were stretched and pressure was mounting. Now that connection is re-examined, its thinness revealed as an illusion created by haste. Travel records show proximity. Employment logs show opportunity. A pattern emerges, subtle but persistent, linking this individual to locations and times that mirror the movements of the victim with unsettling precision. It is not proof. It is something worse. Plausibility. Surveillance footage long considered useless is processed again, this time with modern enhancement tools that stabilize the image, sharpen edges, and isolate motion. The result is still imperfect, still grainy, but details once lost in noise begin to surface. A gesture, a gait, the way a shoulder tilts slightly forward when walking. Experts caution against overinterpretation, warn that the human brain is too eager to impose meaning on ambiguity. Still, comparisons are made, overlays created, similarities noted and debated late into the night. No one says the word match out loud, but it hangs in the air, heavy and dangerous. The family is informed carefully, incrementally. They have learned to read between the lines, to hear what is not being said as clearly as what is. When they ask if this means an arrest is coming, the answer is measured, cautious, wrapped in procedural language. It does not extinguish hope, but it reshapes it into something sharper, more fragile. They return home to rooms that have not changed much in 20 years, to photographs that still capture a smile frozen in time, and they wait, as they have always waited, for a phone call that could finally end or forever extend their vigil. Public interest spikes again, louder this time. Social media fills the gaps that official silence leaves behind, theories multiplying faster than they can be corrected. Amateur analysts pore over documents released under Freedom of Information laws, drawing connections that professionals dismiss and occasionally, reluctantly, consider. The case becomes communal property once more, its mysteries debated in forums and late-night talk shows, its human cost reduced and amplified at the same time. For investigators, this attention is both a resource and a liability, bringing forward new tips while threatening to contaminate memories and motives. One tip, however, refuses to be ignored. It comes from someone who has nothing to gain, someone who waited too long to speak and knows it. The voice on the line is calm but strained, delivering details that were never public, details that align too closely with the known facts to be coincidence. The caller does not name a killer. They name a moment, a conversation overheard years ago that suddenly makes sense in the light of everything that has followed. Detectives track the call, identify the source, and sit across from a person whose hands shake as they talk, whose relief at finally speaking is tempered by fear of what that truth might unleash. As statements are taken and cross-checked, the investigation narrows again, funneling toward a point that feels both inevitable and elusive. Warrants are requested, denied, revised, approved. Doors are knocked on. Old storage units are opened. Personal histories are dissected with a thoroughness that borders on cruelty. Every action is weighed against the risk of moving too fast, of repeating the mistakes that allowed the case to go cold in the first place. The balance between urgency and restraint becomes precarious, a tightrope stretched over decades of failure. Late in the process, a discovery threatens to upend everything once more. A piece of evidence thought lost is found misfiled, its significance misunderstood at the time it was collected. When reanalyzed, it does not point cleanly in any direction. Instead, it complicates the narrative, introducing the possibility that more than one person was involved, or that the crime unfolded in a way no one had previously imagined. The room goes quiet as the implications sink in. The case, it seems, is not closing in on a single truth, but branching outward, revealing how much remains unknown. As Part 10 draws the investigation to the edge of something irreversible, there is no triumph, no clean revelation, only a mounting sense of gravity. The pieces are closer now, pressed together by time and technology and persistence, but they do not yet lock into place. The cold case hums louder than ever, vibrating through files and memories and city streets, carrying with it the unsettling promise that resolution, if it comes at all, will not be simple and will not leave anyone untouched. The moment everyone has waited for arrives without ceremony, without flashing lights or shouted commands, arriving instead as a quiet decision made in a small room where the air feels too thin and the clock on the wall ticks louder than it should. After years of circling the same shadows, the investigation reaches a point where hesitation becomes its own kind of failure. A name is written at the top of a warrant, not because every question has been answered, but because enough of them now point in the same direction to make inaction impossible. The city outside has no idea what is about to shift beneath its feet, no sense that a story it thought belonged to the past is about to demand space in the present again. When the arrest finally happens, it is early morning, chosen deliberately, chosen to minimize spectacle, but spectacle has a way of forming anyway. Neighbors glance through curtains, phones lift almost instinctively, whispers move faster than official statements ever could. The suspect does not resist. There is no dramatic confession, no cinematic collapse. There is only a brief tightening of the jaw, a look that could be fear or resignation or something more complicated, something that refuses to be easily labeled. As the car door closes and the vehicle pulls away, the street returns to its ordinary rhythm, but the ordinary feels thinner now, less convincing. Inside the interrogation room, the years compress. Questions move back and forth across decades, collapsing time with every reference to dates and places that once felt safely distant. The suspect listens, answers selectively, corrects minor details with unsettling precision. There are moments when it feels as if the truth is about to surface, as if one more question will be enough to break the surface tension that has held for so long. Then it slips away again, replaced by deflection, by silence, by the careful language of someone who understands exactly how much to say and how much to withhold. Detectives press, retreat, press again, aware that every word spoken here will echo far beyond this room. The evidence is laid out piece by piece, not as a single devastating blow, but as an accumulation, a slow tightening of space. The DNA that does not exclude. The footage that does not identify but suggests. The timeline that no longer bends enough to accommodate innocence. Each element on its own might have been dismissed in 2003, might have been lost in the noise and urgency of the original investigation. Together, now, they form a shape that cannot be unseen. The suspect's composure falters, just briefly, when confronted with a detail that was never public, a detail only someone present would recognize. It is not a confession. It is something quieter, more ambiguous, and in this case, just as powerful. News breaks before officials are ready. Headlines erupt across screens, echoing the language the city has not read in years. Tokyo, 2003, cold case, arrest. The shock ripples outward, catching people off guard in offices, on trains, in kitchens where the radio murmurs in the background. Some feel vindicated, others uneasy. For many, the arrest reopens memories they had carefully sealed away, reminding them of nights spent looking over their shoulders, of a time when the city felt unfamiliar and unsafe. The past does not stay past. It floods forward, demanding acknowledgement. The family receives the call they once imagined in 100 different ways. There is no single correct reaction to news like this. Relief and grief coexist uneasily, each intensifying the other. They are careful in their public statements, thanking investigators, asking for patience, refusing to declare victory. They know better than anyone how fragile hope can be, how quickly it can be taken back. Still, in private, there is a shift, subtle but profound, as if a weight long carried without question has been set down, even if only temporarily. As the legal process begins, certainty remains elusive. Defense attorneys move quickly, challenging the admissibility of evidence, questioning the reliability of memories stretched thin by time. Experts debate probabilities and margins of error, reminding everyone that the passage of years complicates even the strongest case. Supporters of the arrest argue that justice delayed is still justice. Skeptics warn against the dangers of narrative momentum, against a human desire to impose an ending where none may truly exist. The courtroom becomes another stage where the cold case is reenacted, this time under lights that leave no corner unexamined. Behind the scenes, investigators confront their own complicated emotions. There is pride in how far the case has come, in the persistence that kept it alive when it would have been easier to let it fade. There is also doubt, sharp and unavoidable, about what might have been done differently, about whether this outcome could have arrived sooner, about the cost of the years in between. They revisit old decisions with new eyes, understanding now how close they were at times, how far they drifted at others. The arrest does not erase those questions. It sharpens them. The city watches, holding its breath again, but this time the tension feels different. It is not the fear of an unknown threat, but the discomfort of confronting a truth that refuses to be clean or simple. Murals are repainted. Streets are renamed. Life continues, as it always does, weaving around the places where history refuses to stay buried. Yet beneath that forward motion, something has shifted. The cold case that once symbolized failure and mystery now stands as a reminder of persistence, of the long memory of evidence, of the way time can both obscure and reveal. As the story moves toward a conclusion that no one can yet fully see, one thing becomes clear. Resolution, when it comes, will not feel like an ending. It will feel like a reckoning, layered and incomplete, offering answers that generate new questions even as they close old wounds. The echo of 2003 will not disappear with a verdict. It will remain in the city's collective memory, a reminder that some truths take decades to surface, and that even when they do, they arrive carrying the weight of everything that came before. The cold case is no longer frozen, but it is not at rest. It lingers in the space between justice and uncertainty, between relief and doubt, leaving behind a city that must learn, once again, how to live with what it knows, and with what it may never fully understand. What follows the arrest is not silence, but a different kind of noise, lower in volume and heavier in consequence, the steady grind of procedure that replaces the adrenaline of pursuit. Court dates are set, postponed, reset again, each delay stretching nerves already worn thin. Motions are filed with language, so precise it feels almost surgical, each word chosen to cut or protect, to expose or shield. The case that once lived in alleyways and midnight phone calls now exists inside binders and legal briefs, its chaos translated into order that only looks clean from a distance. Inside the courtroom, time behaves strangely. The past is summoned on demand, reconstructed through testimony and exhibits, while the present sits rigidly in wooden benches, listening. Witnesses age and fast forward as they recount moments frozen decades earlier, their voices steady even when their hands tremble. Experts speak in probabilities and margins, explaining how certainty is measured, how doubt is quantified, how science can point toward truth without ever fully touching it. Every statement carries weight, not just for what it says, but for what it cannot say with absolute confidence. The defense leans hard into that uncertainty. They remind the court, and anyone listening, of lost evidence, of memories altered by time, of investigations shaped by pressure and hindsight. They frame the case as a cautionary tale, a warning about the dangers of reopening wounds with tools that promise clarity but deliver interpretation. The prosecution responds with persistence rather than passion, building their argument brick by brick, insisting that while each piece may be imperfect, together they form a structure strong enough to stand. The clash is methodical, almost restrained, and all the more unsettling for it. Outside, public opinion fractures. Some see the proceedings as overdue justice, a testament to patience and technological progress. Others question whether the city's need for closure has begun to outweigh its commitment to certainty. Conversations unfold in cafes, on trains, online. The case dissected by people who will never step inside the courtroom, but feel invested all the same. The cold case has become a mirror, reflecting fears about time, accountability, and the limits of knowing. For the family, the trial is both exhausting and surreal. They sit through days of testimony that reduce a life to timelines and exhibits, listening as strangers debate the meaning of moments they remember intimately. There are flashes of validation when details are confirmed, when the narrative aligns with what they always believed. There are also moments of sharp pain, when doubt is introduced, when alternative explanations threaten to reopen questions they thought were finally closing. They endure it all with a quiet resolve shaped by years of waiting, understanding now that justice is not a single moment, but a process that demands patience all over again. As the weeks stretch on, the city adjusts to the idea that even this chapter may not deliver a clean ending. Verdicts are anticipated, but expectations are tempered. Everyone involved has learned, in different ways, that certainty is rare and closure even rarer. The case has already changed things, regardless of outcome. Procedures have been revised. Old evidence rooms reorganized. Other cold cases quietly reevaluated, their files lifted from shelves with new curiosity and renewed caution. In the end, whatever decision is reached will land with a dull finality rather than a dramatic crash. There will be no universal sense of triumph, no moment when the weight of years simply lifts and disappears. Instead, there will be acceptance, uneven and incomplete, settling slowly over a city that has carried this story for too long to expect anything else. The cold case will lose its headline status, its constant presence in the news cycle, but it will not vanish. It will live on in policy changes, in personal memories, in the collective understanding that some truths emerge only after being buried for decades. And when the courtroom empties and the microphones are turned off, the story will continue in quieter ways. In the way investigators approach the next unsolved file with a little more humility. In the way families of other victims hold on, recalibrating hope rather than abandoning it. In the way the city remembers 2003 not just as a year of fear, but as a reminder that time can obscure the truth without destroying it. The case began as a rupture, became a cold scar, and ended, if it can be called an ending, as a lesson etched into the city's memory. Not all mysteries dissolve. Some simply change shape, leaving behind a legacy of questions, persistence, and the uneasy understanding that justice, when it finally arrives, rarely looks the way we imagined it would.